Danish numbers. If you try and study them, you'd expect, of course, some similarity to English, Swedish, and Norwegian, which is the case, in fact, but with a big twist. Let's have a look and compare some languages first. So in the first examples from 1 to 10, you're going to notice how similar Norwegian and Danish are, almost identical with just some differences in pronunciation. In Swedish it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In Norwegian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And in Danish 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Icelandic and Faroese are more difficult because they have preserved the old features of Germanic, and they're also very convoluted with a lot of conjugations and declensions and so on, and this can also be seen in some of the numerals, but at any rate in Icelandic, for example, you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Moving on from 11 to 19, here again you're going to notice a lot of similarities between Swedish, Norwegian and Danish. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. In Norwegian 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And in Danish just, again, pronunciation is a bit different. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And to compare a little bit with Icelandic, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And Faroese is quite similar to Icelandic. So from this comparison, I suppose you already notice the great similarities between all these languages and all North Germanic languages, but the difficulty posed by Danish you can actually notice in what's coming next if you compare the numbers between 20 to 100. So in Swedish you would have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. In Norwegian 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100. And then we have Danish. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 50, 100. Icelandic and Faroese, well, they're a tad more difficult if you look at them, but if you look carefully, you're going to notice, nevertheless, a lot of similarities. So the problem is actually here with Danish between 50 and 90. So what is it with these numbers and why do they look like this? So let's take them one by one. 50, helftris. It's constructed of helftredje, meaning 2.5, and since 2, meaning times 20, so 2.5 times 20 equals 50. And from there, it's kind of similar, like 60, tres is 3, and since 2, 3 times 20 equals 60. 70, helfjert, constructed of helfjerde, and since 2, 3.5 times 20 equals 70. 80 fierce is 4, like 4, and since 2, 4 times 20 equals 80, and 90 helfems is made up of helfemte and since 2, so 4.5 times 20 equals 90. So a bit odd, wouldn't you say? Well, in fact, it used to be more simple, and what we're dealing with seems to be a more recent innovation. Now, in Indo-European, there are several systems of numbering with one dominating the rest. We have the system based on tens, the decimal system, the main system in Indo-European languages. Then we have the system based on 20, the vigesimal system, with examples from Indo-Aryan, Iranian, Albanian, Celtic languages, and here an example from North Germanic, sporadically in Slavic. The system based on 5, that's quite rare, some examples in Welsh and Old Indian, but mainly the 10 system. And this way of counting may result from the fact that in prehistory, counting was first achieved by looking at what you had close by, like your body parts, the fingers, for example. This is reflected in the etymology of certain numbers, notably in the names of the Proto-Indo-European 10 and 100, both containing a root also seen in the word for finger, digitus in Latin, cognate to English toe. One notable example of the vigesimal system is, of course, modern French, where the number 80 is based on 20, 80, whereas the number 90 applies both the decimal and the vigesimal system, since you have 90, like 4 times 20 plus 10, 90. French numbers are quite irregular, so it seems to be plausible to perceive them not as one but two systems combined. It also needs to be mentioned that similar cases may be found in Old French, where 30 would be 20 plus 10, 20 et 10, or 40 may be 2 times 20, 20. The vigesimal system correlates in a high degree with its presence in non-Indo-European languages such as modern Georgian, but also Indo-European like Gaulish, and the latter has been proposed as the origin of the system in French, as a matter of fact, because it is usually Celtic that is perceived as the source of the vigesimal system in Western European languages. However, the system cannot be found in Old Celtic, which means we have a big problem here. There are some claims that the origin of the system in Celtic as well as in French can only go back to Vasconic languages related to present-day Basque, which was spoken in Europe north of the Pyrenees. In English, the inherited numerals 60 and 80 were replaced in the 11th century by 30 and 40, respectively, so that's also very interesting. They both come from the Old Norse word skor, meaning mark or tally, and the connecting notion would refer perhaps to counting large numbers of sheep or cattle, for example, with a notch in a stick for each batch of 20. Despite such traces, in Danish, this way of counting is hard to account for. Most linguists actually accept it is a spontaneous innovation appearing without any preceding Middle Age forms or language contacts. However, it is sometimes claimed that it may have been influenced by Norman contacts with the British Isles. The vigesimal system in Danish appears first in written records around the year 1300 in Jutland and spreads then to the whole of Denmark 100 years later. According to linguist Protum Nielsen, in the written sources, the score counting system surfaces for the first time in the manuscript of the Danish text of the Flensborg municipal law from about 1300. Now Flensborg is in Northern Germany, and here you can find forms such as 4 like 4 times 20, 4 times 20 for 80, and helfemsintur, like 4.5 times 20, which would be 90. Whereas approximately at the same time, we have East Danish manuscripts that use the decade forms, for example, 7 for 70, like 7/10. So, although they're difficult to learn due to their complete dissimilarity to other languages, there is a hidden logic that lies behind them. The truncated forms do not appear in dictionaries until the 19th century and are constructed by simply removing the sin-tue. Sine without the e in compound forms is an Old Germanic form meaning multiplied by, whilst tue is of course 20, and the prefix hel, half, followed by a somewhat alternated form of the ordinal numeral, tredje, fjärde, femte. These used to exist as cardinal numerals that consisted of this prefix hel with an ordinal numeral following thereafter, but now they're out of use, so hel tredje, hel fjärde simply meant the value of the ordinal numeral minus 1/2. So in accordance with this, hel tredje would mean 3 minus half, so 2.5. Hel fjärde would mean 4 minus half, so 3.5. This has been somehow preserved, but in a very specific context with telling time. For example, in Danish and in German, you would have, for 2:30, you would say hel tre or halb drei. These features also appear in another Scandinavian language, in Faroese, which, though belonging to the West Scandinavian branch, has been influenced by Danish due to its historical bonds with the Danish kingdom, as Danish was introduced as the official written language in the 16th century. Now, there have been initiatives to change the compound numeral forms and the order of their components as a part of a spelling reform, but it did not work out. For example, according to this reform, 92 to 95 would have been 92. So much easier. This may lead one to think that they were created on the basis of the numbers found in Swedish and Norwegian, but the fact is that they are not only original but historically even older than the vigesimal numerals. So the system is not absolutely unique and restricted only to Danish. Despite the fact that the decimal system is undoubtedly dominant, traces of the vigesimal system can also be found elsewhere. The vigesimal system can be observed not only in the numeral system, but also in some units of measurement that are applied by languages in which the vigesimal system is non-existent. And the measurement units were adopted mainly due to trading affairs, and you will find examples in Dutch, English, Norwegian, and so on. Vigesimal counting may have been practiced in trade first and foremost, and hence triggered the development of the Danish numerals. They may have been created in response to counting practices in contact with speakers of languages using the vigesimal numerals, but then again, this is difficult to prove, and mostly we accept that it was rather a spontaneous internal innovation having occurred in the High Middle Ages. If you're eager to know more about similar topics, Germanic and especially Norse culture, consider subscribing for more quality content every week from this historian here. I'm Irina, wishing you all the best. And of course, if you have anything to add to this short presentation, maybe how to say numbers in your language, and if there is something odd about them, you are most welcome to leave a comment in the comment section. See you soon and follow!